Okay, let's round out chapter 8 here. This next section is on mating behavior. And males and females often differ in physical appearance. Males may possess weapons, antlers, horns, or gaudy ornaments. I like the gaudy ornaments part. And the sexes may differ in their behavior. Many males fight, sing loudly, or perform strange antics to gain access to females. Peacock being an example of one of those. If you're trying not to get eaten, having large ornate coloration is generally a bad idea. But in this case, there's some benefit as it relates to sexual selection. Here's an example of a Victoria's rifle bird in Australia, showing plumage, doing a display, a dance as well. Generally sort of, making their alphaness known. And again, if you're a predator, it makes it easier to find your prey. But again, there's a benefit there. And so Darwin proposed that extravagant features in some males result from sexual selection. That individuals with certain characteristics gain an advantage over others of the same sex solely with respect to mating success. And bighorn sheep, large horns, and sparring is being an example of that. Huge energetic cost, huge potential cost of physical injury as well. But if you don't pass your genes on, then you're not successful, right? You have a lower fitness. And so that's the whole point, is to increase your fitness to pass your genes on to the next generation. So a test of sexual selection hypothesis. This is the bird example. So male long-tailed widow birds have extremely long tail feathers, and they establish territories that defend against other intruders. It's kind of a cruel study, but they captured a bunch of these males and altered their tail feathers to see what would happen. And so here's a picture of this bird with this really ornate long tail feathers. I mean, that's quite. And look at the size of the bird versus the tail. It's quite impressive. And they had the cropped tail, the normal sized tail feathers, and then the control where they cut them and glued them back together, and then the elongated where they glued extra feathers onto the individual to see the average number of nests per male, a measure of their fitness success. And males with lengthened tails had higher mating success than the control males or males with shortened tails. So this supports the hypothesis that females' mating preference is affected by the length of the tail. There's been similar studies as well in other systems, but sort of eloquent but crude study of chopping up these birds' tails and gluing them back together, but showing that effect that if you have a bird toupee, if you will, an artificially long tail, you become more attractive to the females. In some species, the male provide females with direct benefits of mating, gifts, food, helper and young, access to territory with good nesting sites. So if they have a territory that's really good, then females are attracted to that territory because it has good nesting, food, etc. In other species, males provide nothing. Instead, females may receive indirect genetic benefits. And so this is the whole idea of what's helped driving that selection. So kind of back to the direct and indirect. Let me go back to that slide again. The proximate and sort of ultimate causes. And so, looking at the ultimate causes, genetics can be a large one. And we can think about these in two different hypotheses. One is the handicap hypothesis, which a male can support a costly and unwieldy ornaments likely to be more vigorous and have overall a higher genetic quality. Large antlers, ornate plumage, things like that are generally in the way, has a massive energetic cost to build, maintain, a massive cost, particularly for birds in this plumage as it relates to their visibility by predators. And then there's the sexy son hypothesis, that females receive indirect genetic benefits through her sons, who will themselves be attractive to females and produce more grandchildren. So the idea is that if you mate with a fit male, your offspring will also be fit, and they will go on to have a disproportionately high success in a fitness sense, which fitness equals passing on genes. So those are two ideas we can think of as why, two mechanisms we can invoke to look at this courtship behavior. These stalked eye flies are pretty crazy. So they have these huge long stalks with eyes at the end. And so these hypotheses were tested in a study of stalk-eyed flies, where eye stalk length is heritable, and females prefer to mate with males with the longest eye stalks. By selecting long and short stalks over 13 generations, they showed that extreme male eye stalk lengths were maintained by sexual selection. And so here we've got a control group. So this is female mating preference, short-stalked males, long-stalked males. So in this study, they had a control group. They had a group of the longest eye-stalked flies and a group of short eye-stalked flies. Let them go for a number of generations and then kind of mix them all back together to see what would happen. In both the control group and the long-selected groups, so females that were raised with only long-selected males in the control, the females were much more likely to mate with long-stalked males. Now, the females that were reared for, what was it, 13 generations again? They selected for short-stalked males. So even when long-stalked males were available, they selected for short-stalked males. The implication here is that the genes that code for long-stalked eyes are similar to the genes that code for female mate selection. And so while these females that were raised in the short-stalked male dominant population for a number of generations now have the option to mate with long-stalked males, they chose to stick with short-stalked males. So they're encoded based on exposure based on being sired by short-stalked males. They're genetically coded to be attracted to short-stalked males. And so this is showing that this relationship between attraction of long stalk and short stalk can be driven by genetics, both the genes to produce long or short stalks and then the genes within the female to select for either long or short. And this could be the process of a divergence as well, right? So now the species are back mixed, but if only the short-stalked females from short-stalked males are mating with short-stalked males, they begin to diverge from that of the long-stalked males. Females can benefit by selecting males with long eye stalks because their male offspring will be more attractive to the next generation, which supports the sexy son hypothesis. But eye stalk length in male flies is correlated with overall health and vigor, supporting the handicap hypothesis, meaning that having these big long eye stalks comes at a cost. It's energetically expensive and, I imagine, difficult to move around. Females and males often differ in the amount of energy and resources they invest in their offspring. So back to anisogamy, not iso, same, gametes. So gametes that are not the same. Females invest more to produce a large egg and often continue to invest in their offspring, incubating eggs, caring for young, etc. Because of these costs, males often produce more offspring during their lifetime than females. The production of sperm is very cheap, and if you're not involved in parental investment, it's much easier to go out and be involved in production of offspring if you don't have to be involved in the rearing of them. The differences in gamete size and parental care can relate to mating behavior. It should be advantageous for a male to mate with as many females as possible. Females should protect their investment by choosing males that provide ample resources or appear to be of high genetic quality. Sort of choose the female hypothesis, but there's a converse to that as well. There are exceptions. In some species, females compete for mates. We'd expect males to provide more parental care than females, leading to the competition for females for the right to mate with choosing males. Pipefish is one of them. I'll link this in the website. It's an image, or it's a video of pipefish mating, and there the males hold on to the eggs and are generally charged with making sure that they're safe. Males are typically larger, things like that. And so here the males want to choose the largest female because she'll produce the most eggs, and so so they've got to choose, and they can only carry one brood of eggs. And so if they're going to carry one brood of eggs, they want to make sure they get the best brood possible. So they'll be choosy, and the females will have to compete for for mating. Seahorses? Yeah, seahorses do this as well. They have a little pouch that the eggs are laid in. But pipefish males have a special pouch in which they protect and nourish the fertilized eggs, while the female mates with other males. And so she'll produce more eggs and go find somebody else to mate with. Males select for the largest, most highly ornamented females who produce the most eggs, and females compete for the right to mate with males. In that video, it shows the mating process. It's kind of cool. Ecological factors also affect mating behavior. Mate choice can be altered by factors such as number of locations of potential mates, mate quality, food availability, presence of predators or competitors. Ecological factors can also influence mating systems, the number of mating partners, and patterns of parental care. Here's a proposed mechanism that diverse mating systems result from the behaviors of individuals striving to maximize their reproductive success or fitness. Polygyny can occur when females are clumped and the males can monopolize them. This is an example where the mating systems change based on density of the individuals and available habitat. So the bushtail possum is monogamous in habitats where food and nest sites are widely separated, so maybe less dense, but polygynous in habitats where food and nest sites and hence females are clumped. So we can kind of have a diagram of that. So here's the male territory, the large circles, and the small dots are the females. And here females are not very dense, and so you typically have one female per male, and males are protecting their environment, their territory. But in areas with a lot of females, then you may have polygyny where you've got many females in one male's territory, and then the males have to defend their territory from competitors, etc. So it depends on the density, which here it's showing density of females, but you can also think about that as density of good habitat as well, which is good habitats related to overall population level. So you can have the same system kind of oscillate back and forth depending on the abundance of the possum. Now there's benefits to group living. There's typically higher reproductive success, especially when males hold higher quality territories. Group members may share in feeding, care of young. Reduced risk of predation is a big one. So if there's many individuals, they can both ward off predators or also detect them sooner, kind of strengthen numbers, move around in a pack. versus a solo individual, which might be easier to get picked off by a group of predators. Here's the success rate of goshawk attacking wood pigeons, where the prey plummets when attacked when it attacks a large flock. So if there's the success of the goshawk attack, if there's just one pigeon, they're pretty successful, up to 80% success rate of catching the wood pigeon. If there's 50 in the flock, the success rate's much lower. So if they dive on a big flock, it's harder to hone in on one individual. They're kind of fluttering everywhere. So there's the strength in numbers where if there's a bunch of us, we're likely to be able to confuse and kind of overswamp the predator, and they won't be able to pick out an individual. If you're a solo wood pigeon and the goshawk's coming for you, it's not looking so good. It's the dilution effect. As the number of individuals in a group increases, the chances of being attacked by one predator decreases. Group members may respond to a predator by scattering in different directions, making it difficult for the predator to select a target. Anything like this where there's a whole bunch of them. There's a lot of work done on like schooling fish where there's a benefit to being in a school. You kind of want to be on the outside because that's where the food is. Think of like a bait ball, but when a predator comes, you want to be on the inside because the ones on the outside get eaten. Group members may have better foraging success than individuals. Lions, killer whales, wolves, and others will coordinate attacks, and the actions of one predator drive the prey into the waiting jaws of the others. Herbivores may forage more effectively in groups by increasing the probability of finding good patches, as well as like the early warning protection system. A lot of deer will do that. They'll either make noises or indicate with their tail that something's wrong, and then the rest of the group that are kind of minding their own business off a couple hundred yards away feeding will hear that, and then they'll all run away. And so, moving together as a group kind of gives that early warning detection, and then kind of helps them spread out over a large area without having to be hyper aware individually of where the predators are. But as there's cost to group living. As group size increases, food availability depletes faster. So you can think about a field. If you've got 2 deer, they've got plenty of food. If you've got 100 deer, they're all sharing the same resource. It becomes limiting. More time may be spent moving between feeding sites. So if you need a larger feeding site, you're moving slower as a group. And this can create competition for food. In groups with a dominance hierarchy, subordinate members can spend much time and energy on interacting with group members. Group members may live closely together or come into contact more often than a small group, so increasing parasites, diseases can spread more quickly. This is true kind of for any animals that are living in large numbers together. This is the flying time between feeding sites and flock size. So smaller flocks, this is European goldfinches, smaller flocks don't fly very long between feeding sites. Maybe they can utilize smaller patches. They're less selective, where larger flock sizes will fly longer between feeding sites. Maybe they're looking for larger patches. They're more selective. And so as a small flock, you can be a little bit more rogue, utilize maybe marginal habitat, whereas a large flock, you might need a bigger habitat, which then therefore becomes more limiting. Oops, sorry. So there's a cost benefit to this, and we can think about this, that group size should be where net benefits exceed costs. Unless group members can prevent other individuals from joining once the optimal size is reached, the observed group size may be larger than optimal, and quantifying the costs and benefits of a group is hard. So there's the individual benefit minus the costs. So if we start with a group size of 1, we go up to a group size of 4, now we're getting a fair amount of benefit from being in a group size at a relatively low cost. We're still small enough, nimble enough where we're not really competing for food, but we're getting a lot of the benefits as many eyes looking out for predators. increased mating success, things like that. But as the group gets larger and larger, above 7, now the benefits will outweigh the costs. When the 8th pigeon joins the flock, now we're all doing worse, but you can't kick, if the 8th pigeon's frank, it's hard to kick him out. And so it's hard to kind of structure your groups around that. But you can think about anything else like cost-benefit analysis of some is good. Again, back to Goldilocks. Some is good, too much is bad, not enough is also bad. It may be advantageous for individuals to belong to groups that are larger than optimal, but not so large that a new arrival would do better on its own. So then it's kind of limited by that individual making a choice to join the flock versus being on their own. An intermediate-sized group might be large enough to reduce the risk of predation, but not small enough, to avoid running out of food. So again, that kind of Goldilocks hypothesis, the intermediate is generally the best. Okay, we'll stop there, and that should wrap up Chapter 8.